Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Wide receiver one room, Zachary Rome here. Brian Bruner to my right, Castle Black, Mr. Oviedo. Patrick is on a wonderful vacation right now, and we are so very jealous of him. But in the meantime, we're going to continue bringing you your breaking fantasy news. How are you doing today, Brian?
Doing good. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody that celebrates or just likes to drink beer. That's
Fair enough.
Pretty good excuse for that. Had to throw on a green shirt for the occasion, but can't complain, man. Life's good. Just happened to be off of work today too, so nice chill day. Got a bunch of Call of Duty in. Got up to Prestige 7, I think I crossed into, so get that master in no time.
Nice. Yeah, it was a very simple day to me, tiring, but such is life. I'm not wearing any green. I unfortunately don't think I own a pair of, I think maybe I have a splash of green on a dress shirt of mine, but that's about it. So unfortunately, green is not a part of my wardrobe. You know, growing up as a Patriots and a Red Sox fan, I got a lot of red and blue, and my college was black and red. So like, I don't really have much green, but I already have a comment of what's up, leprechauns. Brian over here is supporting that. I also got told my 3-year-old, they attempted to catch the leprechaun at preschool today, but unfortunately got away. So maybe next year they'll get lucky. So
the wife and I always put on the Leprechaun movie, like only on St. Patrick's Day. We only watch it once a year. I always remember how bad it is when we actually put it on. It's just it's such a B movie, but it's entertaining. So watch that earlier. Jennifer Aniston, 1992 Jennifer Aniston. So it's like pre-Nose Job, pre-Friends Jennifer Aniston.
Wow.
Yep. It was like before. I think it would have been her first like major movie role, honestly.
Yeah, because most of her movies came after Friends.
Right.
I've watched that like a couple dozen times through, so that's big in my playbook. But yeah, again, happy St. Patty's Day, everyone. We'll really be diving into a bunch of fantasy news, and then we're going to be diving into the NFC South. We're going to be diving into division by division fantasy implications, what we're expecting from each team in each division. We'll be taking a break in the middle of it for obviously the NFL draft that is about, I think it's 5 weeks away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 weeks away at this point. So we'll get about halfway through the NFL, probably all the way through the NFC. We'll do the NFL draft. We'll come back to the AFC. I'm sure we'll talk about the fantasy implications of those rookies. So that'll kind of cover the teams that we already covered doing this, but figured it'd be a good time to start diving through that. But first and foremost, today's big fantasy news: the Denver Broncos have traded for Jalen Waddle. I believe it was Jalen Waddle in a 4th round this year for the Broncos first, which was the 30th overall, and then a 3rd and 4th round pick. I also saw a crazy graphic between Waddle and Tua and Minkah Fitzpatrick and another couple players. I should double check, but it said that the Dolphins, just from trading and cutting players, have like over 100 million dead cap just because of everything they traded, which is a big damper on what they can do. Granted, free agency has gone and such, but that just means I think they'll be relying a lot on this draft class and the next draft class to really give their team an edge. Kind of brings down Malik Willis signed with the Dolphins. Malik Washington's like his wide receiver 1 now, so they're probably going to address that in the draft. But
they signed Jahan Dotson too, so I think that's like literally their 1-2 at this point would be Malik Washington and Jahan Dotson, which is, I mean, it was crazy to me. Like, you go out and spend up on what was considered like the top free agent quarterback. I mean, it wasn't like crazy, game changing money type of thing, but I mean, they gave him a solid multi year deal with some solid guaranteed money.
Yeah.
He's a young dude. We were talking about it last week that his sample size is like really small. So you'd think they'd want to not give away their top weapon, but I mean, I guess when they're looking at it like they weren't doing shit this year. Why not just get out of the rest of this money, get an extra draft pick? For fantasy implication wise, I think it more or less kind of sucks for like all parties involved outside of maybe like Bo Nix. Malik Willis loses the best weapon that he was potentially going to have, and then Waddle going over to the Broncos, him and Sutton really kind of hinder each other's value there. Whereas I think it's pretty clear that Sutton and Waddle both would have been substantially more valuable just staying and being the 1A on each of their respective teams. But
yeah,
a slight boost for Knicks, but it kind of a hindrance to everybody else.
Yeah, for Miami, it's interesting. I agree. Malik Willis doesn't have a great target now. I really think that means I think the Dolphins have the 11th, 12th overall pick. I think that means they're going to go for Jordan Tyson or Carnell Tate at that pick. That's two of the three top wide receivers. Mekhi Lemon, the other. I don't like Mekhi Lemon in that spot. Mekhi Lemon is a slot only, a slot heavy receiver that is great yards after the catch, great with the ball. But, with Malik Willis, you almost want a bigger playmaker than someone who's just a yards after the catch. And what I mean by that is Mekhi Lemon, yards after the catch, wants a very accurate quarterback to get him the ball on the run so he can move with the ball. So I like some of the other ones. But you'd expect they get one or two wide receivers this draft, especially with that 11th overall. For the rest of the Dolphins, obviously that just means Devon Achane is going to get so much more of the workload, but also we've seen him have injury problems. So that's going to be very interesting to see if Devon Achane can actually stay healthy. I wonder if anything, gives a boost to Ollie Gordon, because he's over 6 foot, 225 pounds. He's a hefty back. I wonder if that boosts his value for the Dolphins, just to be that, third down back or be right there if Achane gets injured. I almost wonder if Ollie Gordon's one you kind of want to buy and stash on the Dolphins while they try and figure out their offense.
And also, kind of indirectly, I think this fucks over Achane a little bit, because if you're a defensive coordinator about to play this roster, let's just have 8 guys focused on Achane and make Jahan Dotson beat us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like not that teams were overlooking him or anything last year, but at least with Waddle, you had a 1,000-yard type of receiver out on the field that required some attention. Like you said, I think it's pretty safe to say they're taking one of the top receivers with that 11th pick. Maybe they even, move up a spot or something like that if it looks like their guy might slip past them. So it makes sense. They're rebuilding, get, all the old money off the books and really just start from scratch. It'd be weird if they end up like truly tanking and have like the first or second overall pick with all these, potentially very good quarterbacks coming in from the draft in 27. Just given that they just gave Willis that money, but we'll see how it plays out. I mean, at the end of the day, NFL runs similar to the way that you got to run your dynasty fantasy teams. You need to know when to rebuild. You can't just keep scraping in and being 8-8 or 8-9 every year and lending with a middle pick and paying all these older veterans. So if they're going to tear it down, then fucking tear it down truly. So see how it goes.
On the flip side for the Broncos, I think it helps Knicks. I also think it helps both Sutton and Waddle a little, depending on how the Broncos play it. If you look at Waddle's college use and his rookie use, he was a slot receiver before he moved out wide and played out wide for most of his time in Miami. Even with Tyreek Hill moved out wide, Hill, I think, played a little more slot or a little more 50-50. Sutton is an outside receiver. Actually, the Broncos didn't really have a slot receiver. Troy Franklin was their slot receiver who took the most slot snaps, and he played more wide snaps than slot. So if my expectation would be Waddle slides into that slot, they don't actually really overlap each other, but actually they get a good 1A, 1B kind of punch that you need to focus both when you can't. So I wonder if that kind of helps both of them out some rather than deter. Again, assuming that they don't overlap positions and Waddle slides into the slot. I think that'll decrease Waddle's ceiling or upside because he's not getting down deep often, but it'll keep his floor up and keep him a little consistent. So it'll be interesting to see how Denver kind of plays that.
Yeah, Waddle. That you remember his rookie season was like an outlier thing. He had like well over 100 receptions with like a really short ADOT, really short yards per catch. But
yeah,
I mean, if they truly utilize him in the slot and they keep Sutton outside, they really don't have anybody else there that's demanding targets. So if they end up with 70-80% of the overall targets and passing work, they both could definitely still be rock solid for fantasy. I'd say prior to the trade, most places that I saw for like early redraft rankings had Waddle around like 19, 20-ish and Sutton like in the mid to later 20s. I guess they're probably, if anything, maybe they both just slide down a couple spots just because not being just the alpha on their team anymore. But they're probably looking at similar draft value. Maybe they even fall too far and end up becoming values if people are truly freaked out about it. But yeah, it's always such big news when you see like a high end player like that get traded. But when you really start looking at the fantasy side of it, it's like, I don't know. Are they that much different, or like are you looking at Sutton or Waddle like wildly different than you did prior to the trade? Probably not.
No,
I don't think Nick's really boosts up that much either. I don't think anybody's going, oh, Bo Nick. Like I don't know where Bo Nix goes in mocks and redraft drafts right now, but he was probably like a borderline QB1 or low end QB1.
Yeah,
he's probably still right there. I don't think you just automatically bump him up 2 or 3 spots, but. He was very streaky last year too. He, overall he was like QB 7 or 8 or something like that, I believe. But it was boom games.
Yeah, peaks and valleys for him for sure.
He had like multiple 4 touchdown games, and then he just killed you a lot of other weeks.
Yep, for sure. Some other news, some other bigger news, and other smaller news. Recapping since we came last week, so some of this is coming from last Wednesday, Thursday. The Jaguars add to their backfield. Chris Rodriguez moves from Washington to Jacksonville, joining Tootin there. Sorry, I have to show. Apparently, heard that Denver got the blue medical tent that Waddle lives in for the trade. So I do think that moves the needle. That obviously Denver wins that trade, getting a free blue medical tent. Having 2 on the field now.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
Waddle might be even more than T. Higgins. Like he doesn't miss a lot of games, but he misses a lot of plays. Like that dude goes out.
Woody Marks.
Very, very Woody Marks-ish. When you have anytime I have Waddle on any important team of mine and like you need him for a game, it's just nerve-wracking watching those games because it's like, wait, where is he? And then he's just not in for 10 plays or 2 series and then comes hobbling back out. So he's a tough one for fantasy. He's a good player, but he does.
Yeah, that's funny. But yeah, Chris Rodriguez. So Tootin was jumping in value, and Chris Rodriguez came in. It's not to say he's going to take over the backfield, but he actually had some decent time in Washington last year. So that's just an interesting one to keep an eye out on, that Tootin isn't guaranteed the RB1 there. They could even draft someone. So temper your expectations on Tootin, I would say, but he's still a holder sell for me. But, I think it's kind of just the unknown of the situation for me.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull up Rodriguez's stats from last year because I know he did get a decent amount of run, especially with Merritt, Krusky Merritt. I forget if he was injured for some of it or just kind of got benched for a little while in the middle. But Rodriguez had 500 rushing yards on the dot on 112 carries, so he had like a 4.46 average, 6 touchdowns. He's a complete afterthought for the passing game. He in 3 seasons he literally has 6 receptions, so that'll still be much all Bashal Tootin. But I mean, they gave him respectable money. He's a big body, and then the other thing that I'm sure a lot of people knew this already, but he was coached in college at Kentucky by Liam Cohn. So it's he literally went and signed his college running back. So there's a role for him there for sure. Yeah, I fully agree with that comment. I lost your volume, Zach. I'm not sure if you can still hear me.
Sorry, you're saying Rodriguez in college?
Oh yeah, so he went to the University of Kentucky, and his last year there was with Liam Cohen. So he literally went out and signed his college running back. So he obviously likes him, has a role for him. Yeah. He's a big body, 5'11", 225 type running back. So I think Tootin was, even before this, I think he was gassed up a little too high. People were the second ETN moved on, people were putting Tootin in that like mid RB2 range, RB 20ish maybe. And I thought that might be a little bit too high. And
yeah,
Rodriguez nobody's going to be really excited about Rodriguez, but I think he definitely will put a ceiling on what Tootin can do overall.
Jacksonville is actually even more of a messy backfield than you might think, because Tootin actually, if you look at snap percentages, Tootin was in that 20 to 30 range. He only broke 30% snap share once. But then you have LeQuint Allen, who was a rookie last year, who played more than Tootin. He didn't do nearly as much. I mean, LeQuint Allen had 94 yards to Tootin's 300, but LeQuint Allen was on the field more than Tootin. He had over 30 or more snaps, 3 games. He was averaging closer to that 25 to 30. And then Chris Rodriguez Jr. actually increased snaps as the season went along, up to 40 to 50% for the Commanders. So it's a messy running back room with Washington, and a messy running back room with Jacksonville. Just, a lot of people are expecting Tootin to come out on top, but that might not happen. We don't know. Out of everyone, he's the one that's taken the least snaps. So it's very interesting to see what Jacksonville's going to do there.
Yep, I just pulled up Tootin's stats for my own amusement here, and he had a terrible. Granted, small sample size. He had 83 carries, but he only averaged 3.7 yards a carry, like sub 4. That's terrible. And yep. Jacksonville is a pretty good offense. ETN did just fine. So the fact that he averaged 3.7 yards a carry is pretty bad. Again, small sample size. He should have a key role in their offense this year. So I'm not saying just fade him out completely, but he doesn't. I wasn't a big fan. I wasn't a big fan at the prices that he jumped to. When ETN left, and Rodriguez, on the surface, a lot of people that don't really even know who Chris Rodriguez is are probably going to go, "Oh, that's great. They just brought in a nobody." Guess two more, but I think he's a guy that I'll probably end up passing on if his value stays around where it's at now.
Yeah, I think if anyone's a buy in that Jacksonville room, it might be Chris Rodriguez, just because of the price you'll have to pay to get him. Like I'm in a startup now. We waited until free agency was done, and Tootin still went in at the 7-8 turn, which seemed very high to me. And Chris Rodriguez is way down. He's not going to be picked for a while. I might try and get him later on, but for me, that's too high. Just like if you're buying Tootin, you're buying him probably towards his peak value, unless he really pops off. Whereas Chris Rodriguez, you can probably get for a third, if not cheaper. If not, he's on waivers in some leagues, depending on how your league runs waivers in the offseason. Like he's only rostered on 60% of leagues in sleeper, so you can get him cheap. So just on a value wise with potential, Rodriguez is the one in Jacksonville that I want to buy right now.
When just last week when we were going over the main moves at the running back position, and we got to Dowdle and Algier, I was saying those are guys that I love to stack up on my dynasty teams because I always want to heavily focus on quarterback and wide receiver with the majority of my budget or my assets. So
Yep.
dudes like that'll have a key role that you don't have to pay up big for. Love having dudes like that on any type of competitive build. If you can have dudes like Rodriguez and Dowdle and stuff like that on your bench to fill in for injuries and buys or flex here and there, wonderful, and they don't cost you a ton.
Yep, exactly. Kyler Murray signs with the Vikings. Again, that happened last Wednesday, Thursday. So that was after we met. It was a 1-year deal, minimum value. So it's the Vikings can, depending on how they want to word it to the public, have a quarterback competition with JJ McCarthy, but rumors are they want to move on from him anyway. So you bring Kyler Murray in for a year, you see what he can do. If he doesn't do anything, oh, well, you have a high draft pick next year to get a quarterback in this supposedly strong quarterback class of 2027. And you just restart there. JJ McCarthy experiment has failed and you move on, or he can learn from Murray and do something. So, but it's a minimum deal for minimum investment. And if anything, I like that for Jefferson, for Addison. Like, you at least have someone that can throw a good deep ball, and these guys can break open. Murray can move. Maybe he can make something of it. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the Vikings work with Murray.
So it gets brought up a lot, but for anything you're looking at for the Vikings last year, everybody likes to point to those like 4 or 5 games that Wentz played just because it was so atrocious for the passing game when McCarthy was in. And I didn't realize how good actually Addison was at that point too, because it usually gets brought up about Jefferson, that Jefferson was, usable 16, 17 points a game, whatever it was with Wentz. But Addison was actually like almost 16 points a game for those games with like multiple touchdowns. And Addison's always had a nose for the end zone his whole career. Even his rookie year, I think he had like double-digit touchdowns. He's a very solid player. It's easy to overlook him he's had like the suspension thing, and he's had some injuries, and he's obviously playing next to one of the best receivers of his generation in Jefferson. So yeah. I've always been a bit of a fan of Addison, and like he's usually a pretty easy to buy low type of guy. Kyler Murray is certainly as capable, if not better, than whatever we got out of Carson Wentz last year. So I like this one for for those pass catchers value. Just the overall Minnesota offense should just be better with Kyler. Yeah. I don't know if you heard this too, but part of that signing was he is automatically a free agent again at the end of this season. Like there was a no tag clause in it.
Okay.
I think if anything, at least for this season, we don't have to worry so much about like the slacking, playing Call of Duty, not doing his homework Kyler, because he realizes that this is where he's going to have his best season, or at least show out his best. Yeah. If he hopes to get a big contract, life-changing type of contract. I mean, I guess he already got a massive contract from the Cards at one point, but
yeah,
no matter how much money he's got in his bank account, he definitely has to realize, and his agent has to be telling him, look, dude, if you ball out this year, you get Justin Jefferson back up to that 1,1700 yard mark, teams will be paying hand over fist to try to lock him into a big contract.
Yep.
He's still 28 years old, will only be 29. That's nothing for a quarterback age-wise. So I think at least for this year, we will see the best that Kyler has to offer.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We'll move to your Eagles. 2 signings. They retained Dallas Goedert, and earlier today they signed Hollywood Brown. He's older, didn't really do much for the Chiefs this last year, so that's not too significant. I mean, you lost Jahan Dotson, so you could say Hollywood's just kind of being that wide receiver 3. If you're me, hoping it happens, that to me says A.J. Brown's out the door to my Patriots and Hollywood's replacing. I don't think that's going to happen, but I mean, Goddard has been a TD magnet these last few years, so that's two decent signings and cheap signings for your Eagles.
I forget which where I heard it, or maybe it was just a post on social media or something like that. But Dallas Goedert has never finished worse than 13 in points per game, uh, fantasy points per game for tight ends his whole career, and he's been in the top 10 multiple times.
Yep.
It seems to be he's definitely a guy that deals with injury. He is. I don't think he's ever played a complete season. If he has, I'd be kind of surprised. But I think a huge amount of his value hinges on if AJ Brown leaves or not. There's plenty of talk here still. I mean, every time I get in the car, if I'm listening to music, I'm listening to like music off of my phone. So I don't ever have my stereo on anything but like local sports talk Philly. So when I get in my car, I always listen to at least a little bit of it. And it's still just very much the main topic of Eagles is that what are they going to do with Brown? What can they get for him? Who are they going to trade him to? Does he want to get traded? Blah, blah, blah. Just, it hasn't quieted down at all with that. So my gut tells me it'll be a draft day trade. It'll be, during the NFL draft, like the way he was traded, the way that we acquired AJ Brown when we were on the clock at 17 overall or whatever the hell that was. I could very much see that happening. I just hope they get good value for him. Yeah. He's still a very valuable asset, and Howie's usually pretty damn good at running things from the front office there. So I think if they do trade him, they'll get something very solid for him. But we'll see, man. Him leaving the Eagles and wherever he ends up going will be a move that will shake up fantasy value quite a bit.
For sure.
Unlike the Waddle trade that we just saw, where we're all kind of agreeing that it's really not changing that much overall. Brown landing anywhere is going to shift so much value all over the place. My Slim Reaper here, that guy, he would just get such a nice value bump if Brown was gone.
Yep.
So yeah, man, the draft will decide a lot for sure, as it always does.
Yeah, I'm hearing some people think it'll be a June 1st trade, just because the dead cap that the Eagles will incur from trading him drops significantly after June 1st. Granted, you're right. It's got to be a draft day. It's not going to happen until draft day, because it's got to be the Eagles guys falling. They really want to draft someone, and it just kind of works out. Or it's going to be after June 1st, after that dead cap hit drops. So it's going to be very interesting to see. It seems like it's 1 foot out the door, but that seemed like it was the case for multiple teams otherwise suited. So yeah, who knows what will happen.
Yeah, it feels like it's the time is over. It's kind of run its course, but you never know. It's a business after all. Maybe they can't get what they want and whatever the case, and they run it back within one more year, but yeah. We'll see.
Justin Fields got traded for a 6th-round pick to the Kansas City Chiefs. And what's actually interesting is rumors are going about that there were multiple suitors, multiple teams that were interested in Justin Fields, and Fields specifically requested or desired to go to the Chiefs, which is very interesting to hear, being that they got Patrick Mahomes, obviously. Presumably, it's to learn from Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes being a mobile quarterback that can still throw. Fields has that mobility but can't really throw or read defenses as much. Hopefully, Fields is thinking I can learn from him and not I can steal his starting job. But at least for the sake of the Chiefs offense, when you're looking at Kenneth Walker, Justin Fields, Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, that looks good for fantasy purposes, or at least Justin Fields for fantasy purposes until Mahomes is able to get back. No, it might not net them too many wins, but for fantasy points, that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Justin Fields has been excellent for fantasy his whole career. Anytime he's starting, you can absolutely start him even in single quarterback leagues. He's just got he's got the cheat code with his rushing, and just like all the rushing quarterbacks, if you get basically anything out of him in the passing game, he can have monster 30, 40-point games. He's done it many times in his career. So he's an interesting one for redraft. I mean, I guess you could, in theory, draft him and Mahomes and just lock that up and just have the, Chiefs QB. That's not a terrible strategy, because I don't think you'd have to draft either one of them that high. You could probably, I guess we'll know a lot more about what Mahomes' time looks like as we're in August and doing redrafts. If it sounds like he's going to be ready pretty early, you might still have to take Mahomes kind of high, but Fields is always an asset for fantasy football. So
Yeah.
we'll see what ends up happening there. But yeah, he could be awesome any game that Mahomes is not playing in.
Yeah. I have an interesting comment about the Waddle trade of does this mean the Jaguars might swap Brian Thomas Jr. for A-Chain? You know, when you think about the shelf life of a running back, especially one that's more injury prone like A-Chain for a younger wide receiver, but granted, you're going to have to pay Brian Thomas Jr. soon because this is his third year. So that would be a very interesting deal for something like that to happen. It's very rare we have top end players included in a trade like that position wise, but that's an interesting thought.
I mean, it could certainly happen. I think I haven't heard anything about the Dolphins wanting to move on from Achan,
I
but
haven't either.
at the same time, if they're really moving on from all their top pieces, now I guess all the pieces they moved on from were expensive and like already on the book for a lot of money. They still have Achan on what I guess 2 more years of his rookie deal. He wasn't a first round pick.
One. I'll look at that real quick.
Or yeah, well, because he just had his third season, or that was his second season that he just played.
That would be his third, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, well then yes, and he wasn't a first round pick, so they would just have the one more year of control.
Yep, this is his last year that he has, so they're going to have to pay him soon.
Yeah.
Brian Thomas Jr. They would have not this year, but next year is his last season before getting paid. So it's
I mean that would make sense. The fact that they will, they'll have to pay him either this year to get him locked up, or like he'll be a or unrestricted, I guess, free agent in the offseason. And if you're a rebuilding team, running back's probably not where you want to put a lot of your assets into, unless you're, of course, the New York Jets and you want to fucking franchise tag Brees Hall.
Yeah, that's rough.
It's like the tanking team in your dynasty league trading for running backs.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. But in this, in that scenario, a asset like Thomas certainly makes more sense to have on a rebuilding team than a running back that's about to be due for a contract. So, I mean, in theory, that's a pretty solid trade for both organizations. But again, like you said, we don't see a ton of like big name for big name player trades.
Yeah.
Very often at all, but it could.
Yeah. Kevin mentioned the Packers are interested in A-Chain, which is very interesting with Josh Jacobs. They have him for 2 more years. He's not at a big contract per se, 11 and 14 million, very little dead cap. So it might be they're shopping A-Chain, or it just teams are inquiring about A-Chain. But A-Chain to the Packers, A-Chain anywhere would be, again, a huge shift for dynasty purposes, or for not dynasty, fantasy purposes, just because of the asset, just how well-rounded he is as a running back. Just wherever he goes is going to bring some great value.
Yeah, Achan's phenomenal. He's one of the best running backs in the league in real life and for fantasy football. He's been fantastic. He was like an A+ in consistency last year. He was like the only running back that didn't give you a single like shit week. I think his worst week on the season was like 13 fantasy points or something like that.
Yeah.
I know with the Josh Jacobs deal, I don't know the exact specs of it, but I remember when it happened like 2 seasons ago, the whole thing was like, it was like a 4-year deal, but it was super front loaded. Like it was only like they pretty much have an out at any point now that they're into like the third year of it or going into the third year of it. So
it's 6 and 3 million dead cap the next 2 years if they cut him. So it's nothing. So that's true.
Yeah. So I mean, any contender, if they could get Achan from the Dolphins for a couple picks, 2 2s or whatever the case may be, warrants
That's what crossed my mind. Yeah,
for sure. It makes sense. Yeah, I just hadn't actually heard any speculation about him getting moved, but any team that is going full tank like this, why the fuck are you paying a running back?
Yeah, and Kevin brought up in redraft, who's the number one pick, Bijan or Gibbs? We talked about this, I think last week is when we talked about it because of the Montgomery news. So feel free to look back last week for a little more info, but we really dove into why, and I think we all agreed it was Bijan over Gibbs, just because of the usage on the team, just what each can do. We definitely think Bijan should stick as the number one, or ahead of Gibbs, whether he's the number one or not in redraft, but Bijan ahead of Gibbs.
Yeah, I agree. Bijan for me too. They're super close. I mean, they're both phenomenal. Electric, can take the house any given play. I won't fault anybody if they decide that they want to take Gibbs over Bijan. It's certainly close, but if I have the 101 or if I'm the 102 or 3 and they're both there, I'm going to pull the trigger on Bijan. I just think he's a little more built to just be like the overall workhorse. He can, I don't know, I forget how many catches he had last year, but it was real high, like 80 something or something like that. I mean, Gibbs wasn't too far behind him, but yeah, I'll take Bijan, but in a close race.
Yeah. Another great question firing away by Kevin. Tyreek Hill. Where do we think he goes? We talked about this about a month ago. For me, this is all based upon the mindset of Tyreek Hill. I think if Tyreek Hill can be a wide receiver 3 on a team and mentally accept that, I think he would do great pretty much anywhere, in the extent of don't have him play 80% of the plays, have him play 50 to 60, keep him well rested. So when he gets on the field, he can just sprint it for a couple plays and then sit for a couple and then sprint, like just keep him well rested so he can kind of still have that speed. He's not going to have that speed over 80, 90% of snaps, but if he can have that over 50 to 60, I think name a team and he can do well there. But that's the mindset of Hill and the team. So I think anywhere that really has a wide receiver 1 or 2 that's set, Hill could go in and do some damage if utilized properly.
I would just assume that if he plays this year, he's cleared, whatever. I don't see him going to anywhere but a contender, or and like most contenders, he would end up being at best the 2 or potentially the 2B or the 3. Mm-hmm. I just don't see like the Raiders or the Browns or like the Titans wanting him or like trying to pay him, knowing that they're not contending, or him going to a team that's going to only have 3 wins. Now, he's a dude that's definitely gotten some big contracts over the years. He's not hurting for money, I don't think, but I mean, maybe if a shit team,
I don't know. He has a lot of kids.
Child support. Yeah. So he does tend to get himself in trouble too. So it's good to have some extra money for like lawsuits and fines and things like that. But I mean, it would seem odd to me if a really bad team gave Tyreek Hill some big bag of money at this point at his age after that injury. So, I mean, the Chiefs are probably like the biggest speculated team, just given that he can go back to a system he knows. Not that they really have like a dire need for a receiver, but he could. He would honestly just be able to step right onto the field and have the vibe with Mahomes again. So, if he goes anywhere, I think it would be the Chiefs. I think they would give him another shot. But Chiefs were.
Fantasy purposes, I think there's 2 spots with how fantasy luck works out. I think there's 2 spots he ends up. He either goes where all injured wide receivers go, San Francisco 49ers, add Tyreek Hill, who's injured, with Mike Evans and Ricky Pearsall and George Kittle and CMC. And it's just, we got so many great injured players. We're going to have someone who's going to be healthy and carry us for a game. Like that seems to be the 49ers mentality. Like fantasy luck wise, he'd go there. The other place fantasy luck wise he would go to is the wide receiver room that has all wide receiver 2s and no elite. And at his age, he would join that. We hope he's the elite wide receiver 1, but he's not. And he's going to go to the Packers. and just replace Romeo Dobbs running the deep wide outs over there, and we're all going to hate ourselves for starting any Packers wide receivers next year. Like, knowing fantasy luck, my luck, Hill's going to go to one of those two places.
When you said the team with all wide receiver twos, I thought you were going to say your Patriots.
Well, Packers still have one or two more wide receiver twos than us, but we're getting there.
You're
right on that. We're getting there.
I would call their wide receiver rooms pretty similar.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and I think he could go to the Patriots too. Why not?
Yep.
They could use a guy.
The last one, speaking of the 49ers, last kind of quick bit of news, Christian Kirk signs with the 49ers. So they're adding another kind of wide receiver there. So they got Pearsall, Christian Kirk, Mike Evans. So they're kind of just piecemealing some stuff together. It's something where, Kirk plays a lot of slot. Juwan Jennings played some slot for the 49ers. So, like, there's some snaps for him there. But I wouldn't get too hyped or excited about Christian Kirk there. I mean, unless Pearsall and Evans just can't play half the season, that's he's not going to do too much fantasy-wise, I don't think. And even there, McCaffrey's going to get all the targets anyway.
Sure. But with the way that players drop like flies on the Niners, it's pretty safe to say, especially with them bringing in Evans and now Kirk, Jennings is definitely not going back there. Ayuk is definitely not going back there. So
no,
it'll really just be the three of them and like Jake Tonjes, I guess, for however long until Kittle's back. And if Pearsall misses his usual allotment of games, Christian Kirk is like the second target. And Christian Kirk has proven himself to be a capable NFL wide receiver. He had that one really nice year with Jacksonville. Kind of, said fuck you to everybody that said that he was overpaid. I remember because it was kind of like Alec Pierce this year.
Oh, yes.
It was like no big wide receivers on the free agent market. He was like kind of arguably the best one, and Jacksonville gave him a really big contract that everybody was like shocked about. And he came out had a really good year. He was like the wide receiver, I think 10 or 11. He was a wide receiver one that year. So he's capable. He even had a couple flash games for the Texans, like towards the end of last year. Didn't really get much run, but the couple times they featured him or used him, he had a decent game. I remember, I think one episode we were joking about, like, well, we can't cut Christian Kirk now because he had like a really, really good game in the end of the year, like in the playoffs or whatever that was. But yeah, I'm not saying you need to draft Kirk and redraft, but it certainly gives him leave him on your dynasty bench for sure. He could have some solid games. I mean, shit, dude, if Evans and Pearsall get hurt, and it's really just like him and the tight end and McCaffrey out there, he could be a very, very valuable asset for however many games that is, and people just don't stay healthy on that team.
Yeah, doesn't seem to be.
It's remarkable.
Yeah. Sounds good. Okay. Again, if you got questions or comments, keep bringing them. That would be awesome. Kevin replied to just now, again, some great stuff, replied to me saying Hill going to the Packers that don't want him going there would be great to see, but that's just my fantasy luck thinking he's going to go there just because that's where all the wide receiver 2 goes, and that's kind of where he's at in his career. But it'd be very interesting to see where Hill goes. If teams are willing to risk it for him and what the money is and such is going to be very, very telling. I think he'll be a sign after the NFL draft just because teams will want to see what wide receivers they can get there to see kind of bringing in these older vets, him, Keenan Allen, those type of players, which are still unsigned. Those will be post-NFL draft signs, in my opinion, so teams can tell what rookies we have to develop and what slots we need.
Yeah. Also, the longer that teams wait to make an offer on Hill, the farther they can see, the better they can see how his recovery from the injury is going, better timetable on like when he's actually going to be healthy. I'm telling you, man, these players just seem to come back so much quicker from like every of injury. I mean, when the Colts gave Daniel Jones that extension, they're all these reports are like he's good. He's gonna be ready for week 1. Dude, when you tore your Achilles not that long ago, it was like fucking career ending. Like you weren't
Yes.
you weren't ready the next season. You were fucking retired from the sport you played. Or
Hmm.
if you came back, it was like 2 years later, and you were super ineffective at that point. Um, it just seems like they've gotten so much more efficient with whatever they're doing with these surgeries and the sports science of it on how they really know how to attack the rehab better at this point. But we'll see. That the Tyreek one was, I think, ligaments and like a broken leg or something like that. But
Yeah.
these dudes are obviously like superhumans in remarkable shape. So I'm sure Hill could rehab as good as anybody out there. But we'll see. The closer we get to the season, we'll see what teams it would make sense for, where he's actually at in his recovery, and he'll end up playing somewhere. I don't think Tyreek Hill's retiring.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Cool. So we're gonna dive into the NFC South, kind of seeing what's gonna happen with each of these teams, talk about the fantasy of each and such, and just we're gonna do this for each of the divisions and see what happens from there, and go from there. So, well, actually, we got one more thing from Kevin asking me about Stephon Diggs, where we think he'll go. I think that's going to be similar again with the Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill. He's going to sign somewhere after the draft. I don't want him to come back to New England. He was overpaid. I kind of expected this. He's going to go somewhere contending, though. I could see him reuniting with Buffalo. That would be very interesting if Diggs goes back to Buffalo or something like that. But I think Diggs will go somewhere contending, but hopefully not my Patriots.
Yeah, Diggs has been, he's been very fucking good. He was with the Texans 2 years ago. Before he got hurt, he was cooking. He was like a top like 13, 14, I want to say, like per game type of receiver. And then he had the big injury. And then with the Patriots last year, I think overall he still ended up as like a top 20 or top ish 20 type of guy.
Yeah.
But he still seems to be effective. He still seems to have it. So if he goes somewhere, hopefully it's just where he can be like a wide receiver too, and he doesn't really kill anybody else's fantasy value. But again, a dude that he's made some big money already. He's at the end of his career. I don't see him going to like the fucking Cleveland Browns, for example. It just
Yeah, I know.
doesn't make sense. Like, why would Stephon Diggs at this point in his career want to go play for some shit team?
Yep. Yeah. So diving into the Atlanta Falcons, the main fantasy assets we kind of have from the Falcons. Obviously, Bijan Robinson, running back 1 for most people, 2 for some who have Gibbs ahead of him. We got Drake London, who's a top 10 wide receiver. Kyle Pitts, who's franchise tag, top 6 to 8 tight end. We got Penix, who we still don't quite know what's going on with him because he keeps being dealt with injuries. And the Falcons have signed Tua to start potentially instead of Penix, depending on Penix's recovery. I covered this a little last week. I love the Tua signing for the Falcons, being that you have 2 lefty quarterbacks, that you don't have to all of a sudden change how your offense runs, change your blind side, change how receivers are having the ball thrown to them, going from a righty to lefty quarterback. That it's going to be it's going to be a smooth transition for when Penix comes back, bringing in and having a left-handed quarterback. So I love that. But just for the sake of fantasy purposes, kind of obviously Bijan top running back. We can do a quick talk on Bijan, but what do we think about these fantasy assets going into this next year?
So yeah, I mean, we already touched on. We both consider Bijan the 101, or at least the top running back if you're taking a running back. So not much to say there. He's an absolute rock star, superstar for fantasy. We all know that. Drake London, always been big on London. I'm not sure. He'll probably end up going similar in range, I'm guessing, to where he went this past year, like wide receivers, maybe 6, 7, 8 off the board, end of first, somewhere in the second, probably, which I like. He'll probably return in value on that. He injuries fucked him over this year, but he was at one point was cooking. We've mentioned it before. He was
Yeah.
literally wide receiver one on the week, like 2 consecutive weeks. I think right before his injury, he was actually up to like wide receiver three per game
Yep.
on the year. So we all know Drake London's a very good player, but I think his not that he has a deep injury history, but he's shown some injury history. So I think that's going to keep him around that draft value, and I'm okay with that value. I don't think it's too high or too low. I think he's probably just right. Kyle Pitts is interesting. He was actually the wide receiver two last year, or sorry, the tight end two last year.
Yeah.
At the
He
end of the
finished
year,
very high.
yeah. His stat line was 88 catches for let me see 928. Fun thing with Kyle Pitts is he's been in the league 5 years. His touchdown total has gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can basically not pencil but ink pen him in for 6 touchdowns next year if
Yep.
these trends continue. Uh, I'm not sure. I think he's kind of a guy like London where I think I'm going to be like exactly okay with where he gets drafted because I'm pretty sure with tight ends this year, it's going to go McBride Bowers or Bowers McBride pretty early. They'll be the guys that you have to spend real high for. And then you're going to probably see the three high achieving rookies from last year with Loveland, Warren, Fannin,
Yep.
probably go right after them, even in redraft, honestly,
Yeah.
because Hittle's not going to be healthy. Nobody's drafting Kelsey that high anymore. Tucker Kraft really showed out for the beginning of the year last year, but I don't think anybody's going to take him as like the third tight end or fourth or fifth even
Yeah.
in draft. So I think it's probably going to go the three rookies after McBride and Bowers, and that's probably where we're going to be looking at Pitts and Kraft, like right in that range. And I think that's fair because he's still the clear second target. I get Bijan does have a big role in the passing game there, but when you're looking at the actual pass catchers, it's London and Pitts and nothing. They let Mooney walk, so it's
Yeah. I mean, they signed Zacchaeus, but that doesn't do too much for the sake of anything.
no.
Um, it seems like for the tight end position, for even redraft purposes, it seems very deep because you talked about those top five, and that doesn't include Kraft, who is tight end 3 in points per game. It doesn't include Pitts. You have Kenyon Sadiq, who's going to be a first round tight end rookie coming out, who's incredibly athletic. So you're already 8, 9 tight ends deep before you bring up players like Kelsey and Kittle and your next tier down of tight ends, which still can produce well. So that's very interesting with seeing Pitts of does he fall into that tight end grouping of this like 7 to 15, which all score very similar, or is he going to be closer to that top 5 in scoring? And that's going to be very interesting to see, kind of hit or miss as to where he goes. I'd lean probably there's 6 or 7 higher scoring tight ends, and then the rest, the next 10 are going to be scoring very similar. I think Pitts will probably lean towards that top half, but yeah, I mean, he should be probably the 6 or 7 tight end off the board just with his track record. But yeah, finishing as tight end 2 is great for his potential.
Yeah, it's funny because we said all those names that you just mentioned, and you can even add more into that, like dudes like Dallas Goedert, who we just said he's never finished below 13th overall or 13th per game. You've got like
Laporta.
Kincaid wouldn't even bring up Laporta, Jake Ferguson, and even Rondé Gadsden. We haven't didn't even bring his name up. You've got dudes like unsexy but pretty safe like Hunter Henry and like Dalton Schultz and shit. So I'm pretty sure that something that has really almost always been true for especially at least for redraft and just normal non like tight end premium or whatever is those tight ends that you have to spend those like 5th and 6th round picks on almost never work out. It's almost always just like a wasted pick because not that those dudes can't be okay for you, but the difference between, I forget where I saw this, but the difference between tight end 2 and tight end 12 last year was like not even a point per game. So why are you going to spend why are you going to spend a third or a fourth round pick on like Colston Loveland, or even like a fifth or sixth round pick on Pitts when you could have Jake Ferguson for like literally nothing with, after all the names we just named. And how many points difference is Jake Ferguson going to be than Colston Loveland? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of, if you want to go get Bowers or McBride, do it, and that way you can just kind of do the set and forget thing, and they'll probably pay off for you. But it is just, in my experience, man, in my money redraft league, every time every time I spend that fifth, sixth round pick on one of these like mid tight end ones, it's literally never worked out for me. It's always been a fucking disaster. So I'm probably waiting on tight end. I'm probably most likely to wait and be the last guy to draft a tight end with what we're looking at is this year's top 12.
Yeah, definitely agree there. I agree with you on that. Drake London, him being taken in that 6 to 10 range, I think is right. He had that high upside. I think that a little inconsistent quarterback is going to bring him back just a little to start, that he'll finish in that 5 to 10 range type thing and won't be able to break through a little, but he's still going to be kind of wherever you draft him. I think it's going to be very similar to where he finishes this next year.
Yep. And then with the quarterbacks, whether it's, I'd assume it's going to be Tua at least to start, where they would have went and paid him. How he does obviously will matter if Penix even gets to come back in and get another shot this year. If Tua's playing well and they're winning games, I highly doubt they just bench him because Penix feels better. But we'll see. As far as their fantasy value, they're 100% just only relevant for like two quarterback and super flex leagues.
Sure.
I mean, I guess if Tua comes out really cooking and all these weapons are firing on all cylinders, he could start showing that he's a quarterback one every week. He's done it before. But I mean, at least to start the year and like for startup dynasty leagues and stuff like that, yeah, I mean, they obviously both need to be rostered in two quarterback leagues, but more or less irrelevant for single quarterback to me.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think unless Tua really does well, I think Penix is a starting quarterback. I think that's just with the investment they've gone in, with what we've seen happen with Tua and just his success with the Dolphins. Sure, he had one great season, but I think just with their investment in Penix, I expect Penix to come in and take over when he's healthy, unless Tua's really on a tear, unless they're having a very hot streak and Tua's back to his top form. I think it's kind of it's going to be Penix slotting right in, if not very soon after he's ready to go.
Yeah, I looked at it too. He only got technically a $1.3 million 1 year deal. Now I guess the Dolphins ate a huge amount of that money, so like Tua is making plenty of money this year, but he is a complete bare minimum investment by the Falcons. So yeah, we'll see. It all 100% hinges on how the Falcons look overall and how he's playing. But if he's just looking mediocre and they're losing games, yeah, Penix will be back in the day he's healthy.
Yep.
So yeah, man, interesting team, multiple pieces there. At least the big three, London, Pitts, Bijan are pretty main players for all formats.
Yep.
Who we got next?
We got the Buccaneers. We got four main fantasy relevant players. We got Emeka Egbuka, we got Baker Mayfield, and then we have a very interesting running back duo in Bucky Irving and Kenneth Gainwell. Gainwell having just signed with the Buccaneers this offseason just 2 weeks ago. Gainwell had a great season with the Steelers, finishing running back 16, had 73 catches, great receiving back, great kind of complementary piece to Bucky Irving, especially with the injuries and other thing that Bucky Irving has. Technically, I think Cade Otton re-signed with the Bucks, but he never really has done too much. You have Chris Godwin, but he's a little older, a little injury prone. So how reliable he's going to be is going to be very interesting to kind of see. But you're looking at Ibuka here being Mike Evans is gone, Chris Godwin's a year older, Baker Mayfield hopefully is out of this slump that he's in, and you're looking at Emeka Ibuka, and you're thinking, I'm thinking he's going to be going as a top 15 wide receiver in redraft this next year, just with the expectations is he's going to get so much volume and he's going to look like he did the first 5 games the entire season is what I'm hearing a lot from people, what people expect from him.
It makes sense that I'm pretty sure that Ibuka might even creep a little bit higher than that. Everybody loves youth. Everybody wants to. I mean, God, his season started off just crazy.
Yeah.
I would love to. I'm sure you can find this on like KTC's like older data, but I'd love to see at his peak, like week 5 or whatever it was, when he just had that like 30-point game where he actually was on KTC. He was probably like the wide receiver like 2 at that point. Maybe he might even hit 1. I mean, that's how hype people get for rookie receivers for Dynasty. That I mean, he was just outrageous. But then he really fell off a cliff there. I know he was a little banged up. We touched on this before, where I really think Baker was more so just not even half of himself injury wise. Like I feel like he was playing at like 40, maybe 50% the majority of the season. He just looked it. He looked like he was in pain every snap. He just looked like he was fucking holding the body part, like just hurting. So Ibuka's, I don't know if he's a guy that I'll want to spend up that high on for redraft. He might be a guy that I just kind of let somebody else pay that price for. But no denying that it was more than just a flash. Like he showed that he can be a very good receiver in this league, and I think it really hinges on Mayfield being healthy and playing well, which he can do. I mean, when Baker's at his best, he's awesome. I mean, the first 3, 4, 5 weeks of the season, he was in the MVP category for sure, and then it just really, really went south. What do you consider Baker for? Like, where do you consider him at as far as like single quarterback leagues for redraft? I mean, he's not in the top 12 to me. I don't think
I think he's in kind of, for me, the 12 to 15 range, just because I expect kind of a bounce back from him this year. His just analytically, when you look at his wide receivers, all of them, including Evans, Godwin, Ibuka, Otten, all his wide receivers just underperformed last year. Whether that's the injuries and they never really came back, if defenses could really focus the wide receivers because you didn't have a running game or what it was, but the wide receivers underperformed, which had a negative impact on Baker. I think it was more the wide receivers underperforming than Baker kind of really stalling out, but it obviously was a little of both. So I expect Baker to kind of bounce back this year, and I think he'll be a borderline quarterback 1. So I have him in kind of that 12 to 15 range. I expect Ibuka to finish in that. I think he's going to be overdrafted. I think he's going to finish in the wide receiver 2-ish in that 15 to 25 range. I'm more interested in this running back field. Like when I'm looking at projected redraft rankings, Ibuka is going to go too high for me. I think Bucky Irvin's going to go too high for me as well. But Gainwell and Baker, I think, have a potential to be some good steal picks to be able to take in your redraft leagues. Just because, again, Gainwell has that PPR receiving upside, and especially if Bucky Irvin's kind of misses some games, Gainwell is going to get some volume, and I think Ibuka finishes higher, but Baker Mayfield with Gainwell, with with hopefully Godwin being healthy, has that bounce back.
I've never been a big Bucky Irving guy. He certainly performed. I'm not saying that I don't disagree that his numbers are there for sure, but he was. I don't think he was even a day 2 running back. I think he was a day 3 guy.
Day 3.
Yeah. yeah, it's just if I'm not mistaken, too, the coaching staff there's not the staff that brought him in. That's always working against them too. They went and paid a pretty decent price tag to get Gainwell, who was one of the higher end, free agents out there. So that tells you that they want they don't want Bucky trying to handle everything. Uh, on the upside, Rashad White did leave. I guess we didn't. That was one little tidbit we didn't touch on. He
Yeah.
did sign with the Manders, and he's an interesting piece. I think White certainly has some fantasy value. It's really with Rodriguez leaving, it's really
Yeah.
just Rashad White and Bill up there at the Manders. So, but back to the Bucks. Bucky's a dude that I've never been that high on. I think he's still going to get drafted very high. He's probably going to get drafted as like a top 12 running back, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'd expect 10 to 15 range. Yeah, for
Sure.
sure.
There's other guys in that range I like more than him. So I'll probably end up drafting some Gainwell. He
Yeah.
really showed out, and especially in the passing game last year. He led the Steelers in receptions, believe it or not, which is kind of funny, but that's how many catches he had. Now, if they use him that same exact way, is yet to be seen. You know, Rashad White was a very heavily a big time pass catching running back. So yeah, he could step in there and be heavily involved in the passing game, which matters and helps a lot for fantasy. But it'll be interesting. There's no way for us to know how they're going to utilize those two until we actually see week one and what the snap breakdown and usage breakdown is. But
Yeah.
Gainwell's a guy I will take in later rounds of redraft for sure. But
Yep.
I really doubt I'll have much of any Bucky or Ibuka.
Agreed. Agreed. And for reference, Ibuka capped out on KTC as wide receiver 8, where he consistently stayed at for about a month to 2 months in that September October range.
Oh,
He dropped to wide receiver 13 and now is back up to 10. So, which is very interesting that, Evans leaves, but he hasn't quite made it back up. But I still think that's a little high for me. Um, his later breakout in college to me leads to that inconsistency problems, which I've seen in other players in my wide receiver model. A later breakout um, means that they have high highs but low lows, and Ibuka kind of fits that mold. Um, you're looking at other players that have high highs and low lows that scored similarly for me. Just real quick on him is Brian Thomas Jr., Lad McConkey, who had huge rookie years and then had a down year. Cortland Sutton, who's been up and down. Deontay Johnson, who was on top of the fantasy world, or he was high and then dropped off hard. Like you're seeing some of these that have some very good games and some bad and just consistent. Even Romeo Dobbs. So I wonder if that's going to be his crutch, is that he's going to have these great games, but he's just the later breakout I've seen lead to some consistency problems, which means I don't think I'll ever have too much value or have too much stock of him. But he could have some great games this next year, and I expect him to have some great games this next year.
and I'm very shocked that he actually only peaked out at wide receiver 8.
Yeah,
And I thought I mean, dude, I think it was like week 4, week 5. He had like a 30-point fantasy game, and it was just like wheels the fuck up, man. It was the Ibuka show.
Yep.
And hey, never forget the trade I made on air last year.
Yes.
I gave up JJ McCarthy. My first, which I ended up getting runner up in that league, so it was the 111.
There you
So
go.
JJ McCarthy, the 111 in this class, and Emeka Egbuka, and I got me Lamar Jackson. So I'm digging that. I'll
Yeah.
give up whatever the fuck JJ McCarthy's worth, and I'll sell Egbuka in the 111 for Lamar in a Superflex league.
100%.
But yeah, man, I'm definitely not even trying to shit on Egbuka. He really
No, not at all.
he's young. He could, if he is a top 5 or 6 wide receiver this year because Baker's healthy and cooking, I won't be any bit surprised. We saw it for the first quarter of the season last year.
Yep. Awesome. Let's move on to the Saints. In reality, the Saints kind of have, you could say, I have 3 here, but you could say 5 or 6 relevant, depending on how you want to put the running back room behind Travis Etienne, who signed with the Saints. It all depends on how you want to put Alvin Kamara and they drafted a rookie last year. Yep, Devin Neal. I know some people were high on Kendre Miller, but none of them seem to be able to stay healthy. Taysom Hill always seemed to have 1 or 2 big games and do nothing. So, but you're looking at the Saints, you're looking at mostly Chris Olave, Shuck, and Travis Etienne. Etienne is a very interesting pickup for the Saints, but he was a top 10 scoring running back 2 of his 4 years, including this last year. So he has some high potential. Chris Olave, I feel like, just at the wide receiver position, always seems to be undervalued some, just because, it was similar to Tua for a little bit of, he had a couple concussions in a row and people just never thought he'd stay healthy. And he put together an amazing year this last year with Shuck. Shuck, I remember people crapping on the Saints because they took Shuck over Shedeur Sanders. Who's laughing now? But Shuck seems to be a good quarterback. I'm not touching Shuck in one quarterback, but he seems to be a good kind of quarterback 2 for Superflex. Definitely worthwhile to have in roster. Travis Etienne, I expect him to slowly creep up in value and in ADP as you get closer and closer to the NFL season. I think people will start realizing just how valuable of a pick he is, and he'll slowly slide up ADP rankings. He's someone I would take over Bucky Irving personally. Definitely taking Travis Etienne over him. And Chris Olave is a sneaky top 5 finish for me this next year. Like he did great things with Shuck, and he's just going to continue to do great things with the volume he's going to get.
For sure, man. Olave did fucking awesome last year. Absolutely cooked with Shuck. And yeah, totally agree there. Shucks, I'm not drafting him as my quarterback 1, but he's certainly interesting for a quarterback 2 in 2 quarterback leagues. Etienne, I think his value's similar to me as if he stayed on the Jags. He was solid last year, top 10-ish. I think that's probably about where he gets drafted here. But it's a young, exciting offense. If he matches what he did last year, even a little bit better, it's not too surprising. I'm in on him at that price. If I'm looking for my first or second running back and I'm in that area of the draft board where Etienne's going, I can see myself pulling the trigger on him. He's solid. And then something to mention that we don't even have the guy pictured here, but Juwan Johnson was the tight end 8 last year. He was very good. Like he was the second option after Olave. And that just kind of furthers my statement of like there are so many capable, usable tight ends that aren't going to fucking cost you a week. That stop drafting these. Like I'm pretty sure I only really play in the 1 redraft league. Well, I say maybe I have 2 redraft leagues, but man, stop spending up on these expensive 3rd and 4th round. I keep using Loveland as an example because I just know that he's going to get people are going to pull the trigger on him in like round 4.
Oh yeah,
and just give me Juwan Johnson off the waiver wire as the tight end fucking 8 that costs me nothing, and I'll take a stud wide receiver or running back in that 4th round pick. So, but yeah, Johnson's he's still there. He's still a key cog. Did the Saints sign a wide receiver?
No,
they didn't sign.
The Saints have Devon Veal, who
the
Broncos.
Yeah, they spent a decent they traded like a 3rd round pick or something for Vele.
Crazy.
It seemed crazy. Yeah,
I think they still had Rashid Shaheed when they did that, and then they moved Shaheed.
Yeah,
they have Jalen Polk, who hasn't really done anything, and that's about it. I'd
Right.
expect them to add someone in this rookie draft, but that'll be fighting for that wide receiver 2 spot. It's not going
Yeah.
to take anything from Olave.
I had I don't so I only pay for YouTube TV, like traditional cable, during football season. So I cut that off like right after the Super Bowl. So I don't have access to like NFL Network for any currently, but I do pay for like the ESPN Hulu bundle or whatever, so I can just like leave ESPN on in the background all day. And I saw at one point there was like a draft show, and Mel Kiper's latest draft has the Saints taking Tate with whatever 9 overall or 11 overall, whatever pick they have, which I mean makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, you've got Olave with nothing really, Devon Vele as your two, so them taking a high end one of the rookies would make sense. And Kuiper's, I guess, as tapped in as you can get when it comes to the NFL draft and stuff like that. So
Yeah, actually, I would love that for the Saints if they would take a wide receiver early on. Tate, Tyson. I would love Makai Lemon. Oddly enough, that seems high for him. A lot of people are fading Makai Lemon some because he had a terrible interview at the combine or whatever. Like that's not a reason to fade him, but whatever. Um, I would love that slot receiver to go with Olave, and I think Tate would fit that well. But sorry, I think Lemon would fit that well. But Tate to the Saints would be very interesting. I'd like that too. So yeah, they definitely need to. I'd expect maybe in the second round, not the first. I think it would fit. I'd expect them to take someone else, but who knows?
yeah, Olave is a guy that I'm definitely good with. I feel like he'll be underdrafted.
Always is.
I'm guessing even with the big year last year, I'm guessing he'll still be like behind a lot of guys. Like we're just saying Drake London's probably going to go early second ish, in that range. Olave is probably going to go multiple spots behind London, if I had to guess. We'll see. I guess we really don't know any true, like, I mean, you can look at like those people doing best ball drafts already, but once we start seeing like real ADP data into like July and early August when real drafts start happening, I'm guessing he's going to be lower than where I value him. So he'll be a prime candidate to get drafted by me, man. He was just so good this year. Finally showed us he can give you a full season. He did play all 17, and you'd only expect the Saints to be improved. They're going to add pieces in the draft. Chuck has a year of experience now, so wheels up for all these guys, I think.
Yeah. For reference, we did 3 or 4 weeks back. We did first 3 rounds of a very, very early redraft mock draft. Chris Olave, this was before free agency, obviously. Chris Olave was taken by you as wide receiver 11 off the board.
There you go.
Chase, Puka, JSN, Amon-Ra, Lamb, obviously. Neighbors, Rice, London, Pickens, and Jefferson were taken ahead of Olave, which there's a strong case for all, but depending on how you're feeling about Rice and his legal issues and Pickens being the wide receiver 2 on his team, like it's hard to say Olave should go ahead of some of those guys. You definitely could, but it feels like it would be hard to say he should go sooner than some of that. But I think right around there is where he should be drafted. I think he's going to be drafted later than that in most leagues.
Yeah, like that. That's solid value. I took him in the mock, so I'll take him in regular drafts too, and we'll definitely do plenty more mocks over the over the season here. I think that what was nice too is we did the 3 rounds, and the only rookie that really factored in there was Jeremiah Love, which I don't think anything that's going to happen in the draft really going to change that. So we're probably looking at that, barring some like weird injuries or something like that. The first 3 rounds that we drafted are probably going to look pretty close to what the real redrafts are like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there might be some leagues where some people are very hyped on certain wide receivers coming out that might slip into the first 3 rounds, into that third round of redraft, but it really shouldn't. I'm the wide receiver guy. Don't take him in the third round of redraft. Probably not the fourth. The
Right.
fifth is where you should start looking at these rookie wide receivers just because of potential expectations from them. Granted, prime landing spot maybe, but wait on them. They're going to take some time. But you got a last team in the NFC South with the Carolina Panthers having four main targets or main players with them. You have Bryce Young as well as Ted McMillan, who Ted McMillan finished decently well this last year. Granted, not necessarily on a points per game basis, but Ted McMillan still actually finished decently well. Bryce Young, who still people are expecting him to be a better quarterback than he has been. Again, for redraft purposes, he's not I might be drafting him as a backup, but he should be on the waivers probably in most of your redraft leagues, in my opinion. From there, we have Chuba Hubbard as the lead running back in Carolina now, as Rico Dowdle has left. They have Trevor Etienne and Jonathan Brooks. Trevor Etienne was a late round pick in last year's rookie draft, whereas Jonathan Brooks just hasn't been healthy whatsoever. He played 3 games his rookie year, and that's it. So maybe he will play some games this next year. He was drafted decently high by the Panthers. So it's difficult. We're talking about Achilles injuries, ACL, MCL injuries. He had an MCL or ACL injury in his rookie year, and it took him out for the last 4 or 5 games and then the next season. So that's showing that there's probably more to that because a lot of players will come back sooner with those type of injuries unless the Panthers are being especially cautious. And then I had to include this player specifically for Patrick. Granted, he's not here, but I had to include him. He always talks about how great Jalen Cooker is going to be for the Panthers. So I had to include him on this graphic there. Cooker, number 18, Hubbard, 30. Yeah. What are we thinking? What are you feeling?
I feel like we should have put Patrick's little cartoon character guy from the intro, in Coker's box there.
I should have.
Yeah, man. For me, it really just comes down to all quarterbacks. Bryce Young is in consideration as a quarterback to lower end. By no means do I want him as a QB1. Hopefully, he continues to develop. He certainly has improved from his disastrous rookie season. He looks like at least a capable NFL quarterback. The big piece to talk about here is Tet. I just want to double check this. When you look at where Tet finished last year, when you're looking at overall points, it was 15th overall, which that's great. That's almost a wide receiver 1, but he was healthy all year. So when you look at his points per game, he finished wide receiver 27.
Yeah,
27 per game. That's not ideal, and I feel like you're seeing him just hyped up, and he's going to end up getting drafted way too high for me in redraft. I definitely a fan of his in Dynasty. Ended up with a good amount of shares of him, whether ones that I drafted or I made some trades for him. So I definitely like him more in Dynasty because I think he'll continue to evolve and progress, and hopefully he can kind of grow with Young, and they can just keep getting better, both of them. But in our mock, he probably went in the 3rd, I think, right?
I'll check real quick.
But not that that's I don't think that's egregious or anything, and he could very well take that leap forward this year. He's a highly drafted talent that showed he gave you 1,000 yards his rookie season. Really checks all the boxes. He's a big dude. He's probably just a little bit high for me in redraft, but again, I'm a big fan of his overall, and especially for dynasty purposes. And then the only other thing I'd really look at is Chuba Hubbard is probably going to be a value to me. I feel like he's kind of going to just get overlooked and slept on.
Yeah,
and he's going to be the key running back there. Jonathan Brooks, we'll see. if he's able to come back or what he can offer.
Yeah.
Gets hurt again, whatever. But now, now that Dowdle's out of the picture, Chuba's probably a guy that I'll look to trade for in Dynasty and look to acquire in redraft, just because he's flashed very good games. Him and Dowdle were kind of just hurting each other after Chuba missed a couple games. Dowdle had those monster games like back to back, like earlier in the season, and then when it went back to being like a split between the two of them, they really were just kind of like putting a ceiling on each other. And now that Dowdle's gone, man, wheels up for Chuba, and I think he's just going to get slept on. He'll be definitely somebody I'd like to acquire for whatever his current price is.
Yeah. So there's two things about Ted McMillan I want to mention, because I think he's the main point to talk about here, is when we talk about players with a high floor and low ceiling in fantasy, look at Ted McMillan this last year. McMillan had 1 3-game stretch where he averaged under 10 points per game, and he only had 1 game over 20 points. So he was the model of, I'm going to score 13, 14 fantasy points on average. Like, that is what he did. He had a high floor. He almost always hit that, but he had a low ceiling. He didn't score a ton in multiple games. And I think where you should draft McMillan heavily factors in on what you have done in your redraft draft already. Looking at where he was drafted in our mock, he was wide receiver 15, but it was done on a team that had Drake London already. You're looking at a potential top 5 scoring wide receiver there. He's going to have those ceiling games for you. If I'm looking at Ted McMillan in my redraft, and I've drafted 2 running backs, another team there had Gibbs and Hampton. I'm not taking Ted McMillan as my wide receiver 1, because he's not going to have those big games that can carry me. I'm taking him as my wide receiver 2 or flex, to say I can plug and play him and he's going to get me 12 to 14 points, and I'm going to be happy with that. But my wide receiver 1, I don't want as, well, I'm going to be happy with what he scores me. I'm going to be waiting on the edge of my seat that he rips off a 60-yard touchdown. But McMillan's not necessarily going to do that. Could be the offense, but I also think he's just that high floor player. And so look at him if you're going wide receiver heavy early. If you're going hero running back, you go running back early into a couple wide receivers. McMillan's someone I'm looking for, especially around that 3-4 turn. If I can, get, if I'm at the 11-12 pick and I can get a running back and get McMillan at the end of the 3rd or early 4th and slot him into my flex and go hero RB into 3 hero RB into 3 wide receivers, and McMillan's that 3rd one I can do, I would love that. But I'm not taking him as my wide receiver 1. Not yet, at the very least. So I think if they get another wide receiver in there to kind of help take the pressure off him, because I always mess up the last name. It's not Jalen Cooker. It's Jalen Coker. He's not the wide receiver 2 on the Panthers. I know Patrick's not here to defend him, but he's not the wide receiver 2 on the Panthers. The Panthers need someone else. Maybe they'll get someone in this draft. That would be very interesting. I'd like to see that. But until then, Bryce Young is still just a mid quarterback 2. McMillan's still a high floor play. He might get that ceiling if he can actually have some focus not on him with another wide receiver on the field, especially if they can get someone in the slot. Let him run those wide out routes, get a strong slot receiver. Maybe after the draft, if they can get Keenan Allen and sign him, that would be very interesting, just for a veteran experience that in there or something like that would be very unique to see. So, look at McMillan for a wide receiver 2 or flex in your redraft leagues. Love him in Dynasty, but not much higher than that. He should be in that wide receiver 15 to 20 range, taken off your redraft boards, in my opinion.
Yeah, man, I got to live the full Ted McMillan experience last year, because I drafted him as my flex or my 3rd wide receiver in my my main redraft league. It was, again, we've talked about it multiple times. I ended up doing like a zero RB build there, where I went in the turn pick is what I had. I drafted London and Nico with my first go around, and then at 3-4 I drafted Lamar Jackson and Trey McBride. So then when it got back to me at the 5-6 turn, everybody was just assuming I was taking two running backs there, but the running backs were so depleted that I ended up taking, I think I went Tet and RJ Harvey. So I basically put Tet as my flex,
Yeah.
put Harvey in a running back spot, and it ended up working out. So I mean, between the games that Nico and London missed, and then just the fact that I had Tet was in my flex like every other week, I think he was literally in my lineup all 17 weeks last year. And it was a very it was a good floor. A lot of the ceiling I got from Lamar before his injury and like McBride and those dudes, it really, Tet was a very solid asset. I mean, I wish I could have got some more boom out of him, but
Yeah.
he didn't really burn you any weeks. And you'd assume that he only improves with a year under his belt and a year of chemistry working with Bryce Young. So he's probably going to end up getting drafted right where he should. And you're right. I fully agree that the build of your team should determine if you're taking McMillan or not. If you did some higher risk, like I took Rice higher than most people would probably take him in that draft. McMillan's a guy that I wouldn't mind pairing with Rashee Rice just for the unknowns and the ups and downs. Little steady Eddie with your riskier boom bust type guy.
Or if you're going, wide receiver 2 and flex, another wide receiver that's very boom bust that would go around there is Jamison Williams. Pairing those two up on the 3-4 turn or around there would be a very, very interesting, good combo.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, man. So that's the NFC South. We didn't want to do one of the more exciting divisions without our third man this week, so we went NFC South. But what's cool with fantasy is even with this being not the most exciting division, there's still multiple important key fantasy guys that we just discussed. So it'll only get more exciting here. So
yeah, for sure.
Like that, and we'll do some of these getting into the NFL draft, and we'll obviously do plenty of stuff for at least for a week or two with the rookies and their landing spots. We'll get some more redraft mocks going. Probably get like a dynasty startup mock or two going at some point as well. And yeah, man, then we'll dive back into these divisional breakdowns, get you the NFC, and it'll be time to redraft, and before you know it.
Yeah, it'll be crazy to think that off season's going as strong as it is, and we'll probably do some more NFC teams these next few weeks. Keep it NFC, do AFC. Patrick will be back. We'll be having a lot of fun discussions, continuing to do the likes of this and any other relevant fantasy news that'll come your way.
Sounds good, man. Well, we're going to try to keep it to like an hour tonight, but we still did an hour and a half because once we get talking about football, and it just keeps rolling.
Yeah, and we had some great questions this week.
Yeah, man.
Always happy for that too.
Always appreciate the questions. So fire them away, as many as you guys got. We love answering them.
Yep, sounds great. Well, we'll see you guys next week. Have a great week, and see you later.
Good night.